On Sunday, we will see the Chargers take on the Cleveland Browns in a game that I think could show us a lot about not only the Chargers defense, but how well the Chargers offense can move against a top level defense. But if that is something that you would enjoy, please like and subscribe. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I cannot do that without your guys' help. But let's not waste any more of your time. Let's go and get right into this. First things first, I kind of want to talk about the fact that this is the, key matchups, and after the game does air on Sunday, we will also be having the 5 things we learned that comes out the following day, as well as normally on Wednesday, we're going to have the film recaps of that Charger versus Browns game, and where we're going to go in depth into some of the plays and kind of how they work. Now, the first thing I want to cover in regards to this video itself is going to be the injuries. And once again, the Chargers are going to be entering this game without Keenan Allen, once again being out this game with that hamstring injury, as well as Dustin Hopkins, the starting kicker, being questionable entering this game. But the Chargers did bring in a kicker onto the practice squad that will likely fill for that need if Hopkins is not ready to go. And Joshua Palmer, the current wide receiver 2, is also questionable at this current moment, and that could be a big factor in what the Chargers passing game looks like entering this game, if he does or if he does not play. Now, the first actual matchup I want to talk about here is going to be the Chargers defense against Nick Chubb and the rest of the Browns rushing game. So last week the Chargers allowed 131 rushing yards to the Houston Texans, primarily from Dameon Pierce having 131 yards by himself. And they currently sit at 10th in the league in rushing yards. But they allowed that against the 10th best, rusher in the league. But the Browns as a whole, especially Nick Chubb, are a much better team. Not only does Nick Chubb rank 2nd in the league in total rushing yards with 459, but he also has 4 touchdowns through the first 4 games of the year. But the Browns as a whole also rank 2nd in the league with a total of 700 plus total yards, 749 to be exact, as well as 7 touchdowns through those same 4 games. Not only do the Browns rank among the best in the league in rushing, but the Chargers also rank near the middle of the pack in rushing yards allowed with about 110 yards per game allowed. But the Chargers have only allowed 2 touchdowns on the ground through these first 4 weeks. So the fact that Nick Chubb has been averaging about 1 rushing touchdown per game and the Browns as a whole have been averaging just a little under 2, the fact that the Chargers have only allowed 2 through the entirety of the season is kind of some good news to see, as the fact that it is possible the Chargers could slow down the Browns scoring on the ground, especially since those 2 rushing touchdowns that the Chargers have allowed so far were both major plays. A 75-yarder last week against the Texans and a 50-yarder just a couple weeks ago against the Jaguars. So it's, for the most part, this Chargers rushing defense has not been great, but they've been very good at kind of preventing some of these bigger plays, and especially good at preventing the touchdowns in those short goal-to-go lines or within the red zone. But with the Browns starting quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, likely the fact is that the Chargers passing defense is going to be able to slow them down enough, and that's something we're going to cover in a minute here, that the, Browns rushing game is going to be leaned on heavily to be able to get them points and yards that they're going to need to stay in this game. Now, like I said, Nick Chubb is currently the 2nd best in rushing yards and one of the best running backs in the entire league, no matter what stats tell you, especially with a Browns O-line that has been very dominant in the rush game, pretty much allowing 5 yards or so before Nick Chubb's even touched. The Chargers are going to have a lot to, have to prepare for and be ready for when it comes game time, especially against that rush game for the Browns. Now, the next thing I want to cover here is going to be Justin Herbert versus the Browns passing defense. Now, as mentioned, Keenan Allen is out actually, and Joshua Palmer is right in the middle of the fence on whether he will or won't play. So the Chargers are already going to be at a disadvantage losing Keenan Allen. But good news, Gerald Everett, who was listed as, partial practice earlier in the week, is cleared and will be a full go for the game on Sunday, as well as Donald Parham Jr., who has missed the entirety of the season so far. So it appears that the tight end room will be full go for this game on Sunday, which is very, very good news for the Chargers. Now, last week we did see some big time players make some big time plays where we had Mike Williams with over 100 yards and a touchdown, Gerald Everett with over 50 yards and a touchdown, as well as Austin Eckler with 3 touchdowns by himself. But the Chargers offense has plenty of firepower to get it going without Keenan Allen and even without Joshua Palmer, who did have a 100-yard game against the Jaguars just a couple weeks ago. Now, Justin Herbert himself has been a very viable option, if not one of the best in the league, at getting yards no matter who he's going against. Currently, he sits number 1 in the league in passing yards with 1,250 yards. Now, that is for people that have played 4 games, I guess, technically speaking, since I'm recording this on Friday. Technically, Russell Wilson as well as Matt Ryan are above him, but, they've played a full game more, so it doesn't really fully count. But Justin Herbert, for players with 4 games, is the most passing yards in the entire league. So he's going to likely be able to get this offense moving, no matter how great the Browns defense is. But the Browns defense is really nothing to laugh at. Even with Herbert and the Chargers offense working well in the passing game, they are yet to face a defense like the Browns. With Myles Garrett playing, as we all have seen, since he's not listed as limited play or anything in practice, looks like he's going to be playing. Myles Garrett is still questionable, Jadeveon Clowney is still questionable, but the fact is that the pass rush for the Browns is definitely nothing to scoff at. We did see the Chargers O-line last week do very, very good with, some young guys and Jameer Sawyer stepping in and not allowing a single sack. So that is good news to see, but this Browns pass rush, especially if Clowney is able to play, is going to bring a lot of pressure on Herbert and going to put him under duress and force some throws a little bit sooner. Now, if Herbert's going to be throwing, earlier with less time with this pass rush, it is something good to pay attention to the secondary of the Browns. And that Browns secondary has looked very good so far this year. The Browns currently are near the bottom of the league in interceptions, which is something that's very important. Herbert has not allowed many interceptions, and, an interception can really turn the tide of the game. But even with the Browns having a very small amount of interceptions, their pass breakup percentage and just completion percentage is the second best in the entire league. They have the second best percentage of, least completions allowed, near 50 to 60 range, which is really, really good, especially, they haven't went against any crazy phenomenal quarterbacks on a consistent basis so far through the year. But Justin Herbert's going to be facing a tough task getting the ball into tight coverage without the Browns knocking it down themselves. Now, the Browns do rank for 12th worst in the league for sacks with only 8, but the fact is that's still right at about 2 per game, and the Chargers O-line is definitely going to have to be ready for that pass rush, especially with Myles Garrett being able to get downfield and get pressure on Herbert consistently with all sorts of moves that he can bring to this defense. Now, last year, Herbert and the Bolts faced a very similar Browns defense, and they would put up 47 points. So I don't anticipate that the same Browns defense, they really didn't add a whole bunch of incredible talent this past offseason. I expect that the Browns defense probably won't be able to slow down the Chargers to a dramatic standstill, as some people seem to be anticipating, but I think they will be able to hold the Chargers offense to a limited amount of scoring opportunities. Now, the next thing I want to talk about here is going to be the Chargers pass defense against the Browns passing game. With Deshaun Watson's suspension getting extended, the Browns have been forced to start Jacoby Brissett, and after losing their 2 best targets from last year in OBJ and Jarvis Landry, the Browns passing game is nothing like it was before. The Browns lay near the bottom of the pile at 8th to last in total passing yards on the year. The Chargers currently sit dead center in the middle of the league in passing yards allowed by the defense. Yet, they did that without J.C. Jackson playing in 2 of the games. With his return, I'd expect that the Chargers defense is definitely going to start taking a step forward as he gets healthy and gets his leg underneath him in allowing less passing yards as the game progresses. Not only that, but they rank right in the middle of the league while going against some pretty, solid two elite level wide receivers so far through this year, including Devontae Adams, Christian Kirk, who has been top 5, top 10 in passing yards or receiving yards throughout this year, as well as Travis Kelce. You also have Darren Waller. All these guys that the Chargers have already won against, and they're managing pretty well even without their cornerback one. Now, the Browns' best receiving options likely will be shut down, or at least limited, by the Chargers matchups because, for the most part, the Chargers do match up extremely well against the Browns offense. Amari Cooper is known as one of the best route runners in the entire league, but he will be facing off against one of the best cornerbacks in the entire league, and J.C. Jackson, who is going to be covering him very closely and could force plenty of incompletions, if not potentially a turnover. Now, David Njoku has the size and the ability to match up very well against some linebackers as well as some cornerbacks, but Derwin James has already shown an incredible way of covering these tight ends, slowing down the likes of Travis Kelce as well as Darren Waller already this year. So I expect Njoku to be slowed down immensely due to Derwin James. And for the wide receiver 2 in Peoples-Jones, he will be going up against Asante Samuel Jr., who has been a menace this year, knocking down all sorts of passes all over the field, as well as getting interceptions and even covering some of the best wide receivers that the Chargers have faced so far. So, with the Chargers likely slowing down the passing game, as they match up very, very well against the Browns, they're going to be forced to lean on that rush attack, as we mentioned earlier. Now, the next thing here is going to be back on the Chargers offense and the Browns defense, and that's going to be moving the rock on late downs to be able to get that first down. Now, it's sad to say that the Bullets have faced their fair share of 3-and-outs so far this year. We've seen it in the first half, the second half, when they've needed it most. They have been shut down on those early opportunities and been forced to punt on the very first time they touched the ball on a drive. Now, even when they prevent a 3-and-out, they still struggle sometimes on those early downs on first and second down, getting the first down, and are put in a spot on third down where they have to get it. And with the number one third down target for the Chargers and almost in the league based on last year's statistics, Keenan Allen still being absent, the Bolts will face a challenge yet again this week in converting those third down attempts. Currently, the Browns also sit at tied for 5th least third down conversions allowed, with only 16 first downs allowed on a third down attempt. Not only that, but they only allow conversions of 36% of attempts. So right about 1/3 of attempts, which, doesn't sound terrible because you're still getting 1 of 3. But if you're doing that consistently, that means that the Chargers are not going to be able to score many opportunities because every time you're hitting third down, you have a really slim chance of converting. Right about average of the league is at a 50% conversion rate, so you're well below that already. Even so, the Chargers have struggled on their own accord with, just converting those third downs by themselves, being 7th in most conversions. So, it's a little bit hard to analyze the Chargers' third down play because they are near the top of the league in converting these third downs, being 7th with most conversions on third down, but they also have an extremely high level of attempts, being 3rd in the league for most attempts on third down. And with all that being said, they have about a 40% conversions on third down, so just slightly better than what the Browns are allowing, but still below the league average. Now, whether the Chargers are going to be able to convert on those third downs or not could be the difference in a winning score or a slow burn until the end of the game. So the Chargers converting on third down quite literally could be the difference between winning and losing this game, as you're not going to be able to move that offense at a consistent rate if that Browns defense as well as this Chargers offense, combine and don't produce at the level that the Chargers need to put themselves in a scoring opportunity. So lastly, let's talk about some predictions here. We've went through all these kind of key matchups that I found very, very important, but now it's time to talk about, the predictions. Last year, we saw a shootout that ranks at 25th all-time in highest scoring NFL game in league history. Although looking back on it, it's a very fun game to watch, especially that you already know the outcome, but I don't really see something like that happening again. Not only has the Chargers defense got much better to slow down the Browns offense, but I think the Browns offense also took a step down, which is going to limit the amount of points that the Browns offense will put up. But on the other side of things, the Chargers offense definitely has also taken a step down, whether that be to injuries of the likes of Keenan Allen and Rashawn Slater, or play calling, we're not quite sure, but they went from being one of the best in the league, top 5 in offensive scoring and, putting up yards and be able to get those first downs last year, being top 5, to, just about average this year. So I don't know if the Chargers will be able to score as many points as they did last year either. Now, it's likely that the Browns' best chance to win this game will be through their defense as well as that rushing attack. So some of my predictions are going to be for this game. I think Nick Chubb will have over 100 yards and likely have 1 to 2 touchdowns, which is not great news for the Chargers. But I also think that the Chargers are going to come away with at least 2 turnovers forced, whether that be an interception or a forced fumble, either or. But I think the Chargers will be able to get the ball back for the offense. And offensively, I think that one of the biggest key contributors, once again, is going to be Gerald Everett as well as Mike Williams. I think Mike Williams might be a little bit slower, as it's really uncommon for us to see him have very good back-to-back games, but I think Gerald Everett's already shown an ability to be very consistent at scoring touchdowns and getting yards. So Gerald Everett, at least a touchdown and somewhere in that 80 yards throughout the game averaged. Now, the final score prediction here is going to be a 31-24 game. Not super high scoring as we saw last year, but again, not super low scoring like we saw last night in the Colts vs. Broncos game. And 31-24, with the winner being the Chargers. I think Herbert's going to be able to put it all together. I think this offense is going to get moving a little bit better, and I think that the Browns offense just isn't going to be able to keep up with how good the Charger offense is by itself. But what do you guys think? Leave your predictions down below, as well as what do you think the key matchups for this game will be. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. It truly means the world to me. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I cannot do that without your guys' help. And as always, I hope it taught some today. Hope it made you smile. Hope it made you laugh. Something really important to me. Affects most day in a great way, because every single day can be a great day if you all just put in the effort. And as always, you guys all be safe out there.
But something deep inside won't let me quit. I swear that I'm inspired by your